Greetings, salutations, welcome to the Sunday Sermon. I am Reverend Riff, your host this Sunday, the same as every other. I trust you all are doing well. Hope you've had a great week, and thanks for being here. We do appreciate it. I enjoy spending my Sunday mornings talking to you guys about the insanity in this book. Fuck yeah, Bazooka Tooth. We did that album of the year stream last night, and towards the end, our good friend Pickety had posited, what was the best show that you saw this year, and what right up there for me was the She album release party. She, Bazooka Tooth, and Prayer Line. Great show. Great show. That was right up there. It's one of the best shows I saw all year. And Bazooka Tooth was a large part of that as they threw the fuck down that night. There may be video, and there may be video of me trying to kill people in a mosh pit on the internet. But yeah, good times. Good times. So, thank you for being here. You know how this starts. We're at week 6. We're a well-oiled machine now. Of course, it's time to induct another heretic into the hall. So let's get right at it. We've got our heretic Hall of Heroes. We've got, start a little recap. Giordano Bruno, man of science. William of Ockham, man of logic. Minocchio, man of the people. Anne Askew, who was a poet and a women's rights activist before that was cool. And of course, our homie from last week, the arrogant and crazy letter-writing Michael Cervantes. And now, man of tenders, who is worthy to join their hallowed ranks and be forever talked about by us until we forget about this next season and do something completely different at least? We're going with Henry of Lausanne. Why? Because he lived Jesus' words and inspired others to do the same. Naturally, the church wanted no part of that. Yeah, Vale, we gotta, they're just handing out, man of tendies. They're not just handing those titles out. You gotta really earn them. Usually in an unpleasant fashion. Oh. Yeah, that is penance. Playing in a worship band? Well, good luck, buddy. Alright, so Henry of Lausanne. Let's talk about him. First of all, we don't know when he was born. We sort of know when he died. 1148-ish. He was definitely dead by 1152. We know that because it's written about people mentioning his death and his followers still carrying on his work after he was already dead. So we know that he was dead then. We think he died around 1148. But again, this guy is a mystery wrapped up in an enigma, wrapped up in some what the fuck. And I love him. Yeah, nothing about his origin story. The guy appears on the scene, starts preaching, winning hearts and minds. But he just kind of falls out of the sky. It's great. We love that about him. Yeah, he likely received his training and orders from the Benedictine monks in Cluny. But it really does seem like from minute one, dude could not get along. He was referred to as a black monk. He wasn't black, but as we would think of it. Cluny does sound like a made-up name. But yeah, he was like, basically there's no record of him ever being in good standing with the church. From the minute we know about this guy, he's somehow become a monk and has immediately used that ordination to fight with the church. He got to start on a technicality, and he ran with it. And what I mean by that is he somehow became a monk, but as I said, from minute one, this guy was causing problems. This guy was He was vocal, and he had some ideas. He had some thoughts, and he made sure everybody knew them. And so naturally, they weren't exactly hankering to give him a province or an area to preach in. Well, it turns out they had this one area where the bishop had to travel away. So there was nobody there to preach. He slides in to one of those, hey, we've got a rotating open pulpit night, if you will. He steps up to open pulpit night and goes off. Immediately, people are in, and everyone talks about what a skilled orator he was. This guy was also very imposing. We don't know how tall he was exactly, but everybody comments that he was tall. Every time he's mentioned is that he was tall. So I'm guessing the guy was tall. He had long, flowing hair, a huge beard, and the other thing about his appearance that is repeatedly mentioned by just about everyone who wrote about him, friend or foe, was that he had fiery eyes. Yeah, he was 5'2" in the 12th century, so he towered over everyone. But yeah, long hair, big beard, fiery eyes. This guy cut an imposing figure. Everyone, again, friend and foe alike, admits that when he spoke, people listened. And he rejected any affiliation with the church, with any denomination of the church. He repeatedly said that he was with Christ and that was it. He was not here for your bullshit. He did not care about dogma. He did not care about canon. He cared about the words of Christ. So naturally, the Catholic Church fucking hated this guy. Because, he was doing what they were supposed to. Moving on. What was the nature of his heresy, you say? Well, his heresy was this. It was pretty mild at the beginning. His main thing that they didn't like was he was absolutely all in on the poverty thing. He would not do he would take alms from people only enough to secure sustenance. He slept on the streets. He lived with the beggars, with the prostitutes, with the dredges of society, just like Christ did. This guy was living, he was walking the walk and talking the talk. And naturally that made all the other priests really look bad. Mild Heresy would be a great band name. Yeah, again, penitence and poverty. You couldn't buy your way into heaven with this guy. You couldn't good work your way into heaven with this guy. Good works were important, but you had to actually be penitent. You had to live the true life of a Christian. You had to be sorry. You had to repent of your sins. This was all very big with him. And if you weren't going to do that, he was going to tell you about it. And again, that was his real beef with the church at the beginning. It wasn't as much dogmatic as it was just, hey, I'm going to walk the walk. And they were like, hey, dude, you're making everybody look bad. He was so convincing in his walk that wealthy women who heard him preach would sell their jewels and go give the money to the poor. They would offer it to him, and he would say, no, I don't want it. Give this to the poor. He would take just enough for himself to survive. Many young men who heard him speak went and married prostitutes in order to make them, and see, reform them, it's not the best word, but that is really the word that a lot of the scholars use, and I think it needs a little context here. What it was, if a woman had been a prostitute at any point in her life, she was painted with that brush. There's no going back at that point. No self-respecting man would want anything to do with her. And in 12th century Europe, there wasn't a lot of other options for women. You got married and a man took care of you. That was or you lived a brutal, poor existence. Those were your two options. He explained that, redemption was possible and that these women should not be looked at any differently than anyone else. Yeah, they had made mistakes, but they could be redeemed. Yeah, the whole Scarlet Letter thing was real, and he was not for it. He lived among those people. He ministered to those people like Jesus did. Again, nothing this guy is doing here is out of line. Like, nothing. So naturally, he's on a collision course with these assholes. Yeah, treating people fairly sounds like that live cuck snowflake shit. Absolutely. You can see why they hated this guy. He sounds like a great guy. This is one of my favorite parts. He had a fucking hype man. This guy would walk into public squares ahead of him, carrying an iron cross, not the Nazi iron cross, on a staff. And then fucking Henry would show up barefoot. Didn't matter if it was snowing, whatever. He showed up barefoot in his monk's habit, spitting fire. Yeah, fucking hype man comes into town with a giant staff with a huge cross on it, and this huge, long-haired, bearded, wild-eyed hobo behind him spitting fire. It had to be an image. I mean, that had to catch people. I believe that is what he shouted, Bale. What's up, bitches? Y'all ready to get Jesus? I like to envision that his hype man was like a Big E. You know, he came into town squares telling them, don't you dare be sour. Clap for your world famous Henry Losane. God, had to be great. The church had never bestowed any authority on this man. And he didn't try to pretend that they had. But he spoke with such conviction that people started following him. And when he would come to a town, they would ignore anything that the bishop and whatever said. They would come talk to Henry. You had a religious question, you went and talked to Henry. You needed somebody to pray with you, they came and talked to Henry. The church was basically, if he showed up in your town, he cut the nuts off your local leadership. Everybody was only listening to Henry when he showed up. It had the effect you think it did. Yeah, this guy showing up in your town, you're like, fuck yeah, Henry Lazourne's tour is coming to town, yo, we gotta go see him. Yeah, his tour, massively successful. Now we get to the shit that really, yeah, this will all turn out well for him. They love being usurped. Yeah, he took it a step further. He rejected all ecclesiastical authority and told others they should do the same. He was one of the fathers of the anti-clergy movement. He believed that anyone could preach. You did not need a mandate from the church. He believed that the scripture could be interpreted by anyone. It was not some magic book that only a select few could understand. Again, some of that Minocchio man of the people shit. Catholic Church is going to have to put the kibosh on this. He declared infant baptism, intercession from the saints, and prayers for the dead to be not only non-biblical, but heretical. Yeah, he went with the I'm not a heretic, you're a heretic line. And again, what do all those have in common? All of those are non-canonical. You don't find biblical backup for any of those. And also, they were big money makers for the church. And he was like, yeah, again, poverty, it's a thing, guys. We should really be into it. Can we get a straightforward religion that doesn't need interpretation? That's what I'm going for here. We're just going to be to the point. He declared that the only things Christians need concern themselves with were the Gospels and Christ's teaching. He said everything else in the Bible you don't need. He was like, you don't need the books of Moses, you don't need the rest of the New Testament, you don't need the epistles of Paul. He's like, you need to focus on Christ's life and try to live like him. Again, he's costing the church money. He's costing the church money. That's what this is all about. And then his final straw was the declaration that not only did priests have no authority over anyone, but that the church itself had no authority to punish or prosecute anyone. He leaned hard into his, only God can judge me. Tupac would have loved this guy. Because this guy was the OG with only God can judge me. The church has no authority over me. And he said, and they don't have any authority over you unless you let them. I mean, he probably really needed that hype man to have a wheelbarrow to carry around his giant balls. Because I don't know how he could possibly have walked around with them. So, I think we know how this is going to end. But it doesn't end quite like you think, because we're in the 12th century here. Why does that matter? Well, the Catholic Church didn't start burning people like matchsticks till like the 15th century. They slow played it, a slow burn, if you will. They were not sure, they were trying not to make martyrs out of these guys. And they were also, with Henry was fucking popular. They did not want a riot on their hands by killing this guy. At first. So he was brought before the Pope. The Pope, realizing how popular he was, I was very proud of that joke. I've been waiting all morning to say it. So the Pope said, you got to go to a monastery. Go join a monastery and start doing the thing like we say to do the thing. Obviously, Henry walked out of church laughing, did not go do the thing. Instead, he ramped up his heresy. And one of his disciples, Peter of Blois, published his teachings in a pamphlet. The pamphlet caught on. Instead of tamping down his stuff, he is now, after meeting with the Pope and being told to knock it off, published a pamphlet. Again, the testicles on this guy. Unreal. Yeah, now I'm just gonna heresy even harder, you motherfucker. So the church began a full blitz of writings, sermons everywhere, denouncing him and his followers. Telling his followers, we will fucking excommunicate you. Stop listening to this guy. It didn't work. People, they were called Henreticians, and they survived for a while. This was a problem that the church had to deal with for a minute. Saint Bernard, not the dog, the asshole, made stopping him a personal mission. And see, this is right around the time that Saint Bernard was allegedly performing miracles and whatnot. And his followers finally had Henry arrested in Toulouse around 1146. And they were like, we've had enough of this guy. Saint Bernard whipped them up into a frenzy and talked about this guy was going to destroy the very church itself if we don't do something about him. He was imprisoned, and they just unofficially sentenced him to life in prison. They basically said, you'll stay in prison till we've decided you're not a heretic anymore, which meant when he was dead. And so they couldn't publicly execute him. They were genuinely worried a riot would break out. So they just kept him in prison and kept saying, we're going to let him out eventually. And they waited for him to die, which he did. And after his death, the church fervently worked to discredit him and his teachings, but well over 100 years, there were still people that considered themselves disciples of his. The Jehovah's Witnesses still to this day consider him an anointed defender of the true faith. And there are celebrations for him. He is mentioned quite positively among Jehovah's Witnesses as one of the few people that actually followed the teachings of Christ. So that's our homie, Henry of Lausanne. You will also find him referred to in history books as Henry the Monk. Because he was that hard, you're like, which monk? There had to be lots of monks. Oh no, Henry the Monk. That guy. With his hype man and his crazy hair. What a guy. I'm a fan. So, let's rap for a minute. What we're going to do... Wait, no, I look... You like Henry less because Jehovah's Witnesses like him. Yeah, Henry still had some problematic teachings. He taught that second marriages were forbidden by the Bible. But he was okay with marrying a prostitute. You just had to stay with that prostitute once you married her. Complicated guy. Complicated times. So, so today for the actual message, we're going to talk about one of the wackier books of the Bible. A book that is probably not, I know in my experience in church, in my years and years of being a pastor's kid and going to church all the time, that this book almost never gets mentioned. If it does, it gets mentioned in passing. Nobody actually preaches from this book because it does not make God look good. It makes God look like a raging psychopath. It makes God look like a big angry dragon that has serious relationship issues and quite possibly is bipolar as fuck. Oh, yeah, we're in the Old Testament, but we are specifically in the book of Numbers. Now, most people remember this book as he begat, this guy fucked this guy's wife, and this guy had a kid, and his kid had this kid, and his kid has, and that is a lot of this book. But the reason that people skip over this book is the big fucking space dragon stacks a body count in here that Die Hard would be envious of. It gets out of control. And it almost gets to seem random. Yeah, this book, so we're going to go through. Now, we've done a couple stories from Numbers in previous segments. We're going to skip over those, but we are going to keep, a running tally today of the body count that the big fucking space dragon stacks up. Because I don't... God loves in mysterious ways, Pickety. Very mysterious. Welcome, my friend. Yeah, the rainbow is a sign of his covenant that he's totally not going to genocide everybody again. He then follows it up with a book of nothing but genocide. So, running count time. Let's count how many people the big fucking space dragon kills in the book of Numbers. Shall we? We're going to call it a number of massacres. This is going to be fun, I promise. So, like I said, Numbers is the book. Your pastor avoids this for good reason. It's really hard to make anybody come out of this. It's really hard to come out of this with anything but like, holy fuck, that dragon's insane. Now, this was compiled by a priest sometime around the 5th century BCE. This would be during the Persian exile. And what makes it kind of unique is the other books of the Torah, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, and Deuteronomy, they were put together, we know, by someone from the priesthood. They were a collection of oral traditions that had been passed down, and the priesthood put them together. The book of Numbers, what is so interesting is that it is by all accounts, these were originally compiled by people who were not priests, and that a priest basically did the final edit on it and shaped it up and put it into the text that we now know. One of the things that kind of is a giveaway there is that the very first story in the book of Numbers is the one that we did earlier about Eleazar and Abinahu. If you remember, they were the guys that offered strange fire. They didn't do the ritual just right. The lighting of the incense ritual for the big fucking space dragon. So he roasted them in front of everybody. We're not counting that in our count today. But that's the very first story in here. So it makes sense that a priest would have done the editing, since the very first story that he puts in the book is like, hey, priests are important, and if you do it wrong, the dragon will melt you. You're throwing down the gauntlet to preach from the book of Numbers. Most people, as I stated earlier, most people think of it as, a collection of he begat him and he begat him. Because twice in the book, the big fucking space dragon tells Moses, I need a census. I think it's because he killed so many people, even he lost track of how many people he had murdered. So he had to count again so he could figure out how many people he murdered. Because, seriously, he kills everyone. I'm amazed there are Israelis left after reading this book. Yeah, nestled all amongst all these genealogies, which are the main reason people think you skip this book, is a really dysfunctional relationship. It's got a real back and forth. Big fucking space dragon gets mad at the Israelites, slaughters them, they apologize, they get back together, and then he, does it again. Yeah, it doesn't go well. It does not go well. So, the first lesson that we're taught is that when you worship dragons, you get burned. Right? Makes sense? We're Numbers 11. It is really this simple. And when the people complained, it displeased the Lord. And the Lord heard it, and his anger was kindled. And the fire of the Lord burnt among them, and consumed them that were in the uttermost parts of the camp. So, right off the bat, this is literally as much info as we get. We get the people complained, the dragon melted them. No backstory on what they were complaining about. It could have possibly been that they were wandering around the desert for 40 fucking years on a trip that you can Google map it. To walk from Egypt to Israel should take about a week, not 40 years. So maybe that's what they were complaining about. Either way, what happened? They complained. He lit them on fire. Right out of the gate here. This is the second story in the book. The first story was, hey, if you're a priest, do your shit right or the dragon will melt you. This one is, welcome to the complaint department. You're dead. We don't get a body count here, but we're going to casually estimate 100 people. Since it had to be enough people that he killed that this story is worth mentioning. And he says we're in the uttermost parts of the camp, so he's saying the people that were on the outskirts of the camp. Which is really fucked up, because that makes it seem like he didn't specifically pick the people that were complaining. He just, everybody was complaining, so he just burned off the edge of the camp. Yes, this was the first instance of an "Are we there yet?" ending really poorly for everybody. So we're going to say that we're at 100 right now. First story, right out the gate, 100 people get roasted by the dragon because they complained about something. We don't know what they complained about, but whatever it was, BFD, the BFSD, not hearing it. That's a quail. For those of you that have never shot birds, that's a quail. Almost immediately after, literally verses later, it's in the same goddamn chapter, the Israelites started complaining again. Now, I would think that if you just saw a dragon roast a bunch of people for complaining, that you would not follow it up with a complaint. That's not how the Israelites roll. It's just not. Doug Funny's favorite bird, the quail. He handled their complaints with his usual diplomatic reserve. He was very calm about the complaints. As you know, Christian parents have taken inspiration from this story 4 generations, despite how awfully it turns out. What am I referring to? Well, I don't know what kind of households you were raised in, but in many Christian households, mine included, parents have this, and I'm sure there are non-Christians that also have this technique, but this to me is kind of where it comes from, where let's say you catch your kid doing something objectionable, smoking. Let's say you catch your kid smoking. Instead of counseling them on the dangers of smoking and making it very clear that you do not tolerate that, and while they live under your roof, they're not going to do that. No. We're talking about the parent that then goes and buys a carton of cigarettes and makes you sit there and smoke the whole carton of cigarettes in an attempt to make you so violently ill. Or, the parent that catches their kid drinking a beer, so then makes them drink an entire, case of beer or a jug of whiskey in an attempt to make them violently ill. Shitheads. They kind of stole this from the big fucking space dragon. Only, I would hope that not as many people die when parents do this. But I don't know. I don't have the data. So let's read the story. Because really, it's... yeah. Exactly. Do you know what... fucking... How do you teach your children? With brutal abuse. I love it, Barry. You wrecked this car. You go wreck 10 cars now. I want you to be sick of wrecking cars. It's like Brewster's Millions, right? That's what we're going with. We're doing a Brewster's Millions. What's up?
I accidentally drunk bad chocolate milk. I wasn't sure what it is, but then
So, let's read the text, shall we? I love how this starts. The rabble with them began to crave other food. And again, the Israelites started wailing and said, if we only had meat to eat. Remember the fish we ate in Egypt at no cost? Also the cucumbers, melons, leeks, onions, and garlic. What is this, third on with Bobby Flay? But now we have lost our appetite. We never see anything but this manna. Does everybody remember the manna story? I take for granted that people know the manna story. They're wandering around in the desert. There's nothing to eat. God makes it rain bread every morning, but they can only gather it that morning and they have to eat it that day or it goes bad, except for on Fridays. On Fridays, it rains double portions. That way they don't have to go looking for bread on Saturdays. Yeah, it was the MRE. That's exactly. Bale says good morning, Declan. He smiled and waved, Bale. So yeah, the manna, and they've been eating this for, again, years at this point, wandering around the desert, eating bread that it rains every night. We'll do a scientific analysis one day of what some scientists have said, if this story was true, what manna could have possibly been. It's kind of interesting. It involves weird crystallization of proteins and whatnot. Kind of interesting, but not germane to what we're talking about here. So they're eating it. That's all they get. They eat this bread every day. The whole man does not live by bread alone thing. Well, these motherfuckers are proving them wrong and are not real happy about it. Yeah, it's rock candy. That's all it is. So Moses heard the people of every family wailing at the entrance of their tents, because apparently that was where you did these things. The Lord became exceedingly angry, and Moses was troubled. Now, let's take a second and talk about the fact that Moses, okay, real talk, Moses never existed. Almost assuredly, there was no real Moses. Moses is about as real as King Arthur. He is probably a collection of a bunch of different guys that did some similar shit that was compiled as a need for a patriarch for a people to create their history. The way King Arthur didn't really exist, neither did Moses. That said, I give them some credit with their character creation on Moses. Yeah, the Bible mentions him. How can he possibly? Yeah, well, if Moses is real, then so are dragons. So I guess I'll take that trade. But one of the things, the character of Moses is a bitch. Repeatedly, Moses throws his hands up and is like, I don't want to do this anymore. This is too hard. I don't want to be your guy, God. I don't like doing this. This sucks. We're about to see... You want to see somebody throw a bitch fit? What we are about to read is a bitch fit of absolutely epic proportions. Like, seriously, I hope that the other Israelites threw tampons at Moses after his little fucking outburst here. Why have you brought this trouble on your servant? What have I done to displease you that you put the burden of all these people on me? Did I conceive all these people? Did I give them birth? Why do you tell me to carry them in my arms, as a nurse carries an infant to the land you promised on an oath to their ancestors? Where can I get meat for all these people? They keep wailing to me, 'Give us meat to eat.' I cannot carry all these people by myself. The burden is too heavy for me. If this is how you're going to treat me, please go ahead and kill me. If I have found favor in your eyes, do not let me face my own ruin." Wah, 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 wah. So the people are complaining, and Moses, instead of going to God and saying, "Hey, maybe we can help the people out," or instead of going to God and saying, "Please don't kill them, they're just really sick of bread, they're trying to do, keto, and it's really hard with nothing but manna." Instead of going to God with any of that, he goes with the "woe is me, I don't want to be the leader of these people because it's hard. Why don't you just kill me if it's gonna be so hard?" I mean, this is the biggest, just like, Moses is a bitch. There's no other way to put it. Like, shut the fuck up, you whining, sniveling little bitch. But yeah, I'll just face my own ruin. It's fine, God. I mean, where am I going to get meat for all these people? Somehow, the amazing thing to me is that God doesn't strike Moses down, because Moses does this shit repeatedly. Why God puts up with Moses, I have no idea. So then God, the dragon, they've awoken the dragon. He ain't fucking happy. He's not happy. He says, "Tell the people, consecrate yourselves in preparation for tomorrow, when you will eat meat. The Lord heard you when you wailed. If only we had meat to eat. We were better off in Egypt. Now the Lord will give you meat, and you will eat it. And you will eat it not just for 1 day, or 2 days, or 5, 10, or 20 days, but for a whole month, until it comes out of your nostrils and you loathe it, because you have rejected the Lord, who is among you, and have wailed before him, saying, 'Why did we ever leave Egypt?'" Look, Cisco. "Now a wind went out from the Lord." It's like, so the dragon farted, apparently. "And it drove quail in from the sea. It scattered them up to 2 cubits deep all around the camp." 2 cubits, that's about 6 feet. So there's 6 feet of quail all around the camp, as far as a day's walk in any direction. This sounds like an extinction level event for quail. All that day and night, and all the next day, the people went out and gathered quail. No one gathered less than 10 homers. And we need to take a second to talk about what a homer is, because it's fucking glorious. A homer, as a unit of measurement, it's about 12 bushels. But what is more fun is the etymology behind that word. What a homer means, literally, go look this up, you don't have to take my word for it, is a homer is 1 ass load. Because a homer is how much you could saddle on a donkey, which is about 12 bushels. So literally, homer translate as 1 ass load. So everybody got 10 ass loads of meat. And if you don't have fun with that, you need to go somewhere else, because you are clearly not here for fun. Yeah. Homer, it's an ass load. So you can just say, "Well, I got a homer of that." What is that? It's an ass load, literally. So it took at least 10 donkeys to carry all of the quail back for each person, putting in context how much quail that is. It's a lot of quail. Then they spread them out all around the camp, but while the meat was still between their teeth, and before it could be consumed, the Lord got angry for some reason that apparently the author didn't feel the need to include. And he struck them with a severe plague. Therefore the place was named Kibroth Hattaavah, because there they buried the people who had craved other food. We don't get a total body count here from the Bible, but if you read some rabbinical texts, welcome Kurt Cummings, welcome. So the best number, we think about 10,000 people died. That is from some rabbinical texts and some estimates. So now our body count through these two instances is 10,100. He does seem like a bit of an asshole. Just wait, it's about to get so much worse. We have just scratched the surface of assholedom here. Space dragons love incense, except for when they don't. That is this tale. Remember, we started off with, Abenihu and his buddy. They lit the incense wrong. They got roasted by the space dragon. They're not even in our body count, but we remember that story. And in an earlier story, I believe you all remember when we talked about Cora's rebellion. Cora, of course, for those of you who weren't for that episode, was a man who came to Moses and said, hey, I think you have a racket here. You're, the leader, and your brother just happens to be the high priest. You got a Chris Cuomo thing going on here. Why can't I be a priest? Why does it only have to be your family that's priests? I think anybody should get to be a priest. And that's, of course, when the big fucking space dragon went all Sarlacc on everyone, and, the ground opened and swallowed all of those people. Well, before that, when Moses was setting up for his showdown with Cora, he said, everybody go light some incense. And God will decide who lights incense in the manner that he likes. But then, of course, that's when, the space dragon went Sarlacc, ground opened up, swallowed a bunch of innocent women and children to get to Cora. Again, we're not counting them in our total here. And we get our first non-estimate death hole here. We should not be excited because this number is fucking absurd. And this is, again, I'm not making estimates here. They put the number in the text. But yeah, this is not pleasant. Cora and all your followers do this. Take censers, and tomorrow morning put burning coals and incense in them before the Lord. The man the Lord chooses will be the one who is holy. And fire came out from the Lord and consumed the 250 men who were offering the incense. So go light some incense. Hey, I'm pissed off you lit incense. 250 of you kaput. And again, that's not counting all the people that were swallowed up into the Sarlacc pit. We're just not even going to count them. We don't know what that number was. I'm done estimating. So now we are 10,350 people dead. And that number is about to jump a lot. But yeah, go light some incense. Turns out I don't like incense. 250 people dead. It is the most passive-aggressive insanity. Why would anybody want to hang out with this dragon? I don't know. Because it seems like, just for any fucking reason whatsoever, he will just melt you. Like, I don't know. I would think you could worship like a frog or a tree. They tried the golden calf. That was a thing they tried. That also didn't work out well. Because he got mad and melted people again. Never complain to a mass murderer about mass murder. They do not appreciate it when you complain about mass murder. You would think that, Barry, but our last story is going to kind of put that into perspective. But you're thinking ahead. I like that. But yeah, complaining about mass murdering, that's a mass murder. After the latest incident, it finally occurred to them that he might be fucking crazy. There is some murmuring about, this asshole just keeps killing people. Is this really the God for us? So they went to Moses and complained about the killings, clearly having learned nothing about how complaints are handled for the big fucking space dragon. It did not. Yeah, I'm not sure why they didn't just leave. Probably seems like that would have been better. This apparently upsets the big fucking space dragon more than the previous incidents. Which, if you're psychotic, getting more angry about people complaining about you murdering people makes sense, right? People complain that you murder people, so what do? You murder way more people. Way more. Let's dive in. The next day, the whole Israelite community grumbled against Moses and Aaron. You have killed the Lord's people, referring to the 250 people that were swallowed by fire and Cora and his family who got sarlacked. But when the assembly gathered in opposition to Moses and Aaron turned toward the tent of meeting, suddenly the cloud covered it, and the glory of the Lord appeared. Then Moses and Aaron went to the front of the tent of meeting. And the Lord said to Moses, get away from this assembly so I can put an end to them at once. Apparently the BFD, Big Fucking Space Dragon, he doesn't, apparently he doesn't have real great aim with the fire because he's telling Moses, get out of the way so that I can roast everybody. I'm done. We'll start over. And Moses fell face down, and he said to Aaron, take your censer, put incense in it, along with burning coals from the altar, and hurry to the assembly to make atonement for them. Wrath has come out from the Lord. The plague has started. So Aaron did as Moses said, and he ran into the midst of the assembly. The plague had already started among the people, but Aaron offered the incense and made atonement for them. He stood between the living and the dead, and the plague stopped. But 14,700 people died from the plague, in addition to those who had died because of Cora. Then Aaron returned to Moses at the entrance of the tent of meeting, for the plague had stopped. Yeah. Yeah. The glory of the Lord you should trigger a Mortal Kombat sound in your head. That's really what you should be. 14,700 people. So remember, we were at just over 10,000, and the people were like, hey, this guy keeps killing people. He should fucking knock it off. So what does he do? He kills more than any. We are now up to 25,050 people that have been killed. Again, these are all his followers. That's 8 9/11s. 9/11, the most horrific day in this country's, history from a terrorism standpoint. That's like Tuesday to these people. They're just, Space Dragon was pissed. Bunch of people died. 14,700 in this juncture. Then he goes full slasher. Full on slasher film. After the incident with Balaam and his talking ass, you remember that one? We did an approximate year for this, Barry. Best estimates are when they think it took place were between 12 and sometime in the 13th century BCE, like 1250 or so, 1250 to 1200, somewhere in there is the approximate when this, nonsense was going on. So we remember the story of Balaam, right? We did Balaam earlier. Again, we'll do a quick callback for anybody that wasn't here for that Sunday sermon. Balaam was a wizard. No other way to put it. And he's one of those interesting stories where it seems like God's at least somewhat intimidated by him. We don't get the impression that Balaam worships God, but he knows who the dragon is. And they have an uneasy kind of alliance. And the king of Moab calls Balaam and says, hey, I want you to come curse the Israelites before they get here and fuck my shit up. So he shows up, and Balaam attempts to curse them, and he can't. God tells him, you're not doing that. While Balaam is on his way to visit the king, his donkey sees an angel, and to get out of the way, causes Balaam to smash his foot off the wall. When he veers to that side of the road, Balaam hits the donkey turns around and looks at Balaam and goes, what are you hitting me for, asshole? There's an angel there. That's when God allows Balaam to see the angel and says, if your donkey hadn't moved, I was going to kill you because I told you not to go talk to the king. Then God backs off and goes, you know what? You can go talk to the king, but don't you dare curse Israel. So Balaam gets there and goes, look, I'm not cursing Israel. King offers him money, women, whatever he wants. Balaam says, I'll try. And he ends up blessing the Israelites. And he tries to curse them again, and he blesses them again. So at this point, Balaam gives he does a little whisper into the ear of the king, goes, your best bet is to get some hot chicks and have them trade some poon for prayers. Because the Israelites have been playing hide the scroll with the women of Moab. And they were basically trading WAP for worship. That's the deal. You want this? You gotta, you want to get some of this? You gotta pray to my gods. Forget that big angry dragon over there that you've just seen massacre a whole bunch of people. Maybe worship our gods. They're just, like a nice little gold idol. Probably not going to breathe fire and kill your family. Probably not going to make the earth open up and swallow you. They're just, innocuous little tchotchkes that you could pray to. And oh, by the way, I'll bang you if you do. I can't imagine why the people of Israel were into this deal. And at this point, another census happens. Probably again to try and figure out who's still left because the body count is so high. So Balaam had told, the king, have the women start sleeping, with the guys if they'll agree to worship them. It works. The Israelite men are into it. No mention how the Israelite women feel about this arrangement. That somehow did not make the text. And so what happened was that the big space dragon, he has I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought there. The space dragon, he gets mad and sends another plague. This plague starts killing people. We don't know how many, but it's finished when one of the priests sees a man go into a tent with a Moabite woman and begin to have sex with her. And he comes in and takes a harpoon and basically staples them together, a la Friday the 13th. Yeah, that's apparently biblical. That makes all the deaths stop. Yeah, we don't know how many people died, but it was a whole lot. And our final tale goes, at least this time it wasn't the Israelites. And I'm giving you a puppy there because you're going to need a puppy for this story. You're going to need a puppy. So, the big fucking space dragon demands revenge. He says, hey, I'm mad that you made me kill a bunch of our people there because they were having sex with those women that they willingly had sex with, but he demands revenge because nobody can argue with the big fucking space dragon. It's not a good idea. It should be noted that being a complete asshole was totally a part of winning a battle back then, or even now today. I'm not trying to take this out of context. When you won a battle back in the day, atrocities were expected, I suppose. That really doesn't make this feel much better, though. Like, that should not take away from what you're about to read. And again, look at that puppy. Trust me, look at that puppy. Soak up every bit of goodness that puppy can offer you. Because this is rough. So the Israelites captured the Midianite women and children and took all the Midianite herds, flocks, and goods as plunder. They burned all the towns where the Midianites had settled, as well as their camps. They took all the plunder and spoils, including the people and animals, and brought the captives, spoils, and plunder to Moses and Eleazar the priest, and the Israelite assembly at the camp on the plains of Moab by the Jordan across from Jericho. Now kill all the boys, and kill every woman who has slept with a man, but save for yourselves every girl who has never slept with a man. Anyone who has killed someone or touched someone who has killed must stay outside the camp for 7 days. On the 3rd and 7th days you must purify yourself and your captives. There have been estimates done as to how many Moabite women, children were slaughtered here. The best guess is around 200,000. And so we have the previous plague where he killed 25,000 people, 24,000 people, I'm sorry, with the whole plague for sleeping with the gods. And now we get 200,000 people, mostly women and children, slaughtered. But don't worry, the virgin girls are taken to be possessed by the men. Yeah. God is love. God is love. So, we're going to look at that number for just a second. We didn't count all the instances. We didn't count every killing. We just took the highlight reel. And as you see, he killed 250,000 people. Quarter million people. That number is why the book of Numbers is indefensible. Because if you remember, of that 249,050, 50,000 of them are his own people. His own people. But he makes up for it by instructing them to slaughter 4 times that many innocent women and children. But don't worry, they didn't kill the virgins. They got something far worse. A lifetime of rape and forced servitude. That's why there was the puppy. I hope the puppy helped. 'Cause, yeah. The book of Numbers, there's numbers in it. Numbers of massacres. There's no real positive spin to put on this. But if you've ever wondered why preachers stay away from this book, that's why. Because I don't know how you could put a positive spin on any of those stories. They all just kind of seem like really haphazard. I'm angry. You have annoyed me. Everybody fucking dies. It's just like... I mean, the quail one really gets me. Because, it was... Oh, I'm going to make you eat meat, all right. And here's all the meat. Here's 10 ass loads of meat per person. And then they start to eat the meat, and he just starts killing people. Like, why? Why didn't you just kill them? Why make the quail come and then kill the people? It doesn't make sense. Yeah, that is literally it, Barry. Is it? Yeah, you could, but I mean, the slaughtering of the women that weren't virgins is so over the top, and that was not in line with practice from back then. That was just an over the top massacre, killing all the little boys. I mean, we're talking about babies, and there's some rabbinical texts that are far more graphic that I will not read on the air about how they did that. Yeah, quail from the sea. That's an excellent question. I also don't know that quail are super abundant in Egypt. Maybe they are. But yeah, quail, not a seafaring bird. But apparently the wind blew them in from the sea we're talking about if every person got 12 bushels. I don't know how many quail fill up a bushel, but it's probably a couple. And if you're talking about 10 bushels per man, because of course they weren't counting women and children when they said there was 10 bushels for everybody, because we all know women and children don't count. This is the Bible we're talking about. So you're probably looking at millions upon millions of bushels of quail. So that would have to be, what, tens of millions of quail? Where did, that's a mega flock and a half. It just... Complain about the quail, get killed. Complain that you don't have any meat, get killed. Complain about the killing. Well, that's a killing. But hey, as long as you murder a bunch of women and children in the end, he won't kill you. Because there are other stories where that's why he doesn't murder them. Or, he murders them because they don't murder enough people for him. Sonic decided to sponsor the end of the sermon. Oh, I hate Sonic. I like their slushies and whatnot, but I've never been keen on the food at Sonic. I'm not a fan. But that is our sermon for today. I'm sorry that it was not uplifting. I tried to inject some levity into it because it's pretty heavy stuff. But yeah, apparently worshipping a dragon in the 13th century BCE was not the safest choice for a god. Maybe a nice round Buddha or something would be better, No pointy ends there, not known for breathing fire, generally seems more affable. Maybe they should have gone that route because yeah. I mean, what are you supposed to say about this? He killed 250,000 people for no fucking reason. So thanks for being here, everybody. Yeah, go light some incense or don't. I'm not sure how to tell you to light it. Apparently, you have to light it in a special magical way. Good luck with that. And yeah, just watch out for big fucking space dragons because what we've learned, if nothing else, is that there's no pleasing them. And maybe, just maybe, they're as random as anything else. But at this point, it certainly doesn't seem like worshiping God is any less dangerous than not worshiping God, seeing as he has no problem wiping out his own followers. Yeah, that is, from a historical perspective, that is what I would say is the most likely thing, is that plagues kept happening. And as a way to explain the plague, it would be, well, you must have been complaining. They must have done something with, pissed God off, because why would he allow this plague? It must have been because we did something wrong. The classic, well, I was making too much noise. That's when my boyfriend broke my nose. I had it coming. That feels like a lot of what this is justification for an abusive relationship in the context of the story. But yeah, more than likely, some plagues happened, and they explained it as, well, yeah, the dragon was pissed. Of course there was a plague. I do think it's interesting that sometimes it's a plague, and then sometimes they say the dragon used fire. Which also, I guess, could beggar the question, did a plague just occur, and the dragon didn't have anything to do with it, and they just blame the dragon for these plagues? Like, when it says the dragon consumed people with fire, I'm pretty willing to believe that they're talking about the dragon melting people with fire. But maybe, just maybe, some of these plagues weren't even the dragon's fault. He just got blamed. Maybe, he just had some weird space bugs on him that the people caught when they were around him. Maybe that's what happened. Maybe he's not such a bad guy. I'll leave that for you to decide. But I hope you all enjoy the rest of your Sunday. In whatever you do, I hope you have a great time. Thank you so much for being here. We'll be back on Wednesday with Real Scary. And we'll be back next Sunday with another Sunday sermon. Until then, be well, light some incense, and watch out for big fucking space dragons. Take care, everybody.